I see we're getting a battle for the soul of Adam Smith here. Who owns Adam Smith? Tom, are you going to defend your version
Brilliant
of him?
Enlightenment thinker.
I'm not going to claim to own Adam Smith any more than anyone else. Adam Smith said some wonderful things and he wrote some great works. He wrote in a time and a context, and of course there are things that he said which I might not necessarily agree with, which might not apply now. I think that Will's characterization of Adam Smith is, well, if I'm distorting him, this is one of the grossest distortions I've heard. This idea to start with, that the Industrial Revolution was somehow the wonderful alchemy of state intervention and free markets. Well, I don't deny that there was a state involved. Of course, there's always been a state involved, and markets depend on rules, they depend on institutions. Adam Smith would have accepted that. We would accept that as well. But the Industrial Revolution happened when we had a state that equated to less than 10% of GDP, when we had minimal taxes, when we had minimal regulation. So I think to try and use that to justify an enhanced European social model, a larger fiscal stimulus, more government intervention, more government planning in the economy is a particularly curious argument, although I'm glad you cited Adam Smith. We're always happy when his name crops up. I suppose I could go on, but I think one of the things that I think really needs to be addressed, at least for the non-British people in the audience, is this idea that Britain is engaged in some kind of crash deficit reduction program. Now, in nominal terms, spending is going to continue to rise every year for the next 5 years. Yes, there'll be inflation, so yes, there will be some real terms cuts. But these are so modest as to be almost inconsequential. Maybe 2%, maybe 5% over 5 years when you're factoring in inflation. This takes us back to the level of spending we had probably in 2008. And this is hardly the kind of public sector apocalypse that people like Will would have you believe. And I have to take issue with this whole idea of fiscal stimulus, this whole idea that more debt is the answer to the debt-created problem that we're in, that somehow we can borrow ourselves out of a hole, and that if we just borrow enough money and we just keep spending, we just keep pumping it through the system, the engine will start running again. This is a complete and utter fallacy. It's a complete misunderstanding of economics, because where does this money come from? Government is not just creating new purchasing power or new wealth out of thin air. That wealth has to be created and that wealth has to be allocated. And all the government can ever do is take wealth from one man's pocket and put it in another man's pocket. And what are you doing? You're really, by and large, taking money, taking resources away from people, using them productively, and giving them to people who are using them less productively. This is not a solution to our economic growth problem. This is not a solution to our debt problem. And the one final point is this idea that the Adam Smith Institute, that the advocates of the free market, are somehow in favour of incumbent market players and against new competition and against new market entrants. This, frankly, is absurd. Almost every government intervention in the marketplace serves a simple purpose, and that is to protect entrenched and established interests against competition and against insurgents. And that's what's happened with the bailouts, that's what happened with government intervention throughout the last however many decades. If you want market insurgents, if you want more dynamism, you're not going to get that with more government, you're not going to get that with more public spending. You're going to get that by freeing entrepreneurs from regulation, from taxation, and letting them do their thing, which is creating wealth.
That's what I call a classical libertarian position. Thank you.